You brought a monster to dinner? The alien scientist whispered, staring at the plate in front of him. No, Daniel Carter replied calmly. I brought dinner to the people who were too afraid to understand it. The entire hall went silent. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Across the polished glass tables of the Galactic Culinary Summit on Veron Prime, hundreds of representatives from different worlds stared at the same thing. A meal. A simple meal. Except the main ingredient came from the one creature every civilization in the galaxy had spent centuries avoiding. The Vorax Titan. The name alone had ended conversations. It was a creature that lived on the frozen moons of the outer systems, a biological marvel covered in natural armor, built by evolution to survive conditions that had defeated entire colonies. Every species had a story about it. Every species had a warning. Do not approach it. Do not study it too closely. Do not underestimate it. And most importantly, never believe you understand it. But Daniel Carter had placed it on a dinner table. Daniel was not the kind of person anyone expected to change the way the galaxy viewed humanity. He was not a military commander. He was not a politician. He did not wear a decorated uniform or carry a title that made rooms become quiet when he entered. He was a former Earth survival specialist who spent most of his life studying ecosystems, learning how creatures adapted, and teaching people one simple lesson. Fear was often born from ignorance. Standing across from him was Dr. Kale Voss, one of the most respected xenobiologists in the galaxy. Kale had spent 20 years studying apex species. His silver-blue skin reflected the artificial lights of the summit hall, and his expression showed exactly what he thought of the situation. Confusion, disbelief, and a little bit of disappointment. You expect us to believe this is acceptable? Kale asked. His voice remained controlled, but everyone could hear the disbelief behind it. Daniel looked at him and took a slow sip from his glass. Acceptable, he repeated. That depends on what you mean. Kale stepped closer. That creature represented the peak of natural evolution. Entire civilizations considered it untouchable. Your species looked at it and decided to serve it as food. Daniel smiled slightly. Not because he was mocking him. Not because he wanted to prove a point. It was the same expression he had worn countless times when someone asked him a question that had a much simpler answer than they expected. You keep saying humans are afraid of meat, Daniel said. I think that is where everyone gets confused. Around the room, alien delegates leaned forward. They had heard humans were strange. They had heard humans were unpredictable, but they had never understood why. Kale folded his arms. Then explain it. Daniel looked through the massive windows of the summit hall toward the distant stars of Veron Prime. Humans are not fearless, he said quietly. That is something people misunderstand about us. The room became even quieter. We feel fear. We know danger. We respect things that can hurt us. He looked back at the alien scientist. But on Earth, we learned something very early. Kale waited. Daniel placed his glass down. The things that scare you are usually the things you know the least. For the first time that evening, Dr. Kale Voss had no immediate answer. Because for the first time, he wondered if the galaxy had spent centuries studying humanity from the outside without ever truly understanding what it was looking at. The first question the room asked was not about the creature. It was about Daniel Carter. They wanted to know what kind of human would look at something the galaxy feared and see something worth understanding. For the next several minutes after the dinner presentation, the Galactic Culinary Summit became less like a celebration and more like an interrogation. Delegates from dozens of worlds gathered around the display table, each one trying to find the mistake. Dr. Kale Voss studied the samples, reviewed the preparation records, and checked the biological data again and again. Every result was the same. It was genuine. Daniel had not created a replica. He had not used a synthetic substitute. He had prepared a real Vorax specimen. Kale finally looked up. You understand what this creature represents, correct? Daniel leaned against the table, calm as ever. A living animal? No, Kale replied. A symbol. The Vorax Titan is not simply a predator. It is a benchmark. Every species that has encountered it has measured themselves against it and admitted they were beneath it. Daniel glanced toward the massive holographic image of the creature hovering above the room. The Vorax was shown standing nearly 12 feet tall, moving through frozen terrain where most species could not survive. Its strength was legendary. Its instincts were studied by scientists across the galaxy. To most civilizations, it was proof that nature could create something unbeatable. Daniel saw something different. You are all looking at the wrong part of the story, he said. Several delegates exchanged confused looks. Kale narrowed his eyes. Explain. Daniel picked up a small piece of equipment from the preparation table. It was simple, old-fashioned, and almost out of place among the advanced alien technology surrounding him. When humans first explored Earth, we were surrounded by things stronger than us. He turned the object in his hand. Animals that could outrun us. Creatures that could survive environments we could not. Things with better senses, better physical advantages, and better natural weapons. Kale listened carefully now. And yet humans became dominant. Daniel nodded. Not because we were the strongest. The room went quiet. Because we learned. Before Kale could respond, a sudden alarm echoed through the summit hall. The lights shifted from warm white to emergency blue. The massive observation window overlooking the exhibition grounds displayed a warning message. The Vorix containment demonstration area had detected unexpected movement. The delegates immediately stepped back. Security teams moved toward the exits while officials began calling for evacuation procedures. Kale looked toward Daniel. This is why creatures like that are never treated casually. Daniel did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the display. Something about the warning bothered him. Not the creature. The situation. That is not an attack pattern, Daniel said quietly. Kale looked surprised. How would you know that? Daniel walked closer to the screen. Because it is not moving like a predator. The security feed expanded across the main display. The entire hall watched as the Vorix changed direction inside its habitat. It was not charging. It was not hunting. It was reacting to something else. Daniel studied the movement for several seconds. Then his expression changed. The calm confidence disappeared for the first time. Something is wrong, he said. Kale noticed the change immediately. You are afraid? Daniel looked at him. No, he paused. I am concerned. The difference between those two words was something the alien scientist had never considered before. And before anyone could ask another question, the doors to the summit chamber opened as a security officer rushed inside with a message that made every conversation stop. The Vorix is not the problem, the officer said. Something has entered its territory. The security officer's words changed the entire atmosphere inside the summit chamber. The Vorix is not the problem. Something has entered its territory. For a moment, nobody understood what that meant. The delegates had spent years studying the creature as the ultimate hunter, the final stage of natural evolution. The idea that something could make the Vorix react was almost impossible for them to accept. Dr. Kale Voss stepped toward the display screen, his expression becoming serious. What entered the habitat? The officer hesitated before answering. We do not know. The sensors are having difficulty identifying it. Daniel Carter looked away from the screen and toward the emergency exits. That small movement caught Kale's attention. You are not surprised. Daniel stayed quiet for a moment. I am surprised. Then why do you look like you expected this? Kale asked. Daniel finally looked back at him. Because the Vorix is not running. The room became silent again. Kale studied the security footage. The creature moved slowly through the artificial landscape, keeping its attention focused on a section of the habitat hidden by dense vegetation and rock formations. It was alert, but not aggressive. You can tell that from watching it move? Kale asked. Daniel nodded. Animals communicate all the time. Most people just stop listening. That answer bothered Kale more than he wanted to admit. For decades, his species had built entire research programs around understanding dangerous life forms. They had advanced scanners, genetic analysis, and predictive behavior models. Yet this human, standing in a simple jacket at a dinner event, was reading the creature through observation alone. Security teams arrived at the observation area and began locking down the surrounding sections. The summit officials demanded answers. The guests wanted to leave, but Daniel did not move. He continued watching the Vorix. You should step away, Kale said. That creature could change direction in a second. Daniel looked at him. You are still thinking about what it can do. And you are not. Of course I am. Daniel looked back at the screen. That is why I am paying attention. The security feed suddenly cleared. The hidden area of the habitat came into view. The entire room leaned forward. Everyone expected to see another predator. Something that had entered to challenge the Vorix. Something equally dangerous. Instead, they saw something completely different. A smaller Vorix juvenile was trapped near the edge of the habitat, separated from the main area after a malfunction in the environment system. The adult creature had not been preparing to attack. It had been protecting it. Kale stared at the screen. It was guarding the young one. Daniel nodded. Yes. The alien scientist looked confused. But why would you assume that? Daniel gave him a quiet look. Because fear and protection often look the same if you do not understand what you are seeing. That sentence stayed with Kale. Because for the first time, he realized something uncomfortable. The galaxy had classified the Vorax as a monster because of what it was capable of doing. But nobody had bothered to ask what it was capable of caring about. Then the situation changed again. A message appeared on the security display. The habitat control system had been damaged, and the emergency team could not safely enter. The officials immediately began discussing solutions. Some suggested shutting down the entire area. Others wanted to sedate the creature and remove it from the habitat. Daniel watched the debate quietly. Then he stepped forward. No, every conversation stopped. Kale turned toward him. No. Daniel nodded. You cannot solve a misunderstanding by creating a bigger one. The room stared at him. Then what do you suggest? One official asked. Daniel looked through the glass toward the Vorax. I go in. The doors of the Vorax habitat slowly opened, and every person inside the observation chamber forgot to breathe for a moment. Daniel Carter stepped forward wearing nothing more than a protective field jacket and a small communication device. No weapon, no armor, no dramatic speech. Just a human walking toward the creature that had made entire civilizations retreat. Dr. Kale Voss moved quickly behind him. Daniel, wait. Daniel stopped and looked back. What? Kale struggled to find the right words. For the first time since meeting the human, he did not sound arrogant. He sounded genuinely concerned. You keep saying humans understand dangerous creatures. But understanding something does not mean it cannot harm you. Daniel nodded. That is true. Then why are you doing this? Daniel looked through the transparent barrier at the Vorax Titan standing in the distance. The massive creature watched him carefully, protecting the smaller juvenile behind it. Because right now, everyone in this room is making the same mistake. Kale frowned. What mistake? Daniel answered quietly. They are treating fear as information. The habitat doors sealed behind him. The entire summit watched through the security feed as Daniel entered the controlled environment. The artificial landscape stretched for hundreds of feet, filled with towering rock formations, cold mist, and unfamiliar plant life designed to recreate the Vorax home world. Every movement was monitored. Every sound was recorded. The galaxy was watching. Some delegates expected the human to panic. Others expected him to prove he was reckless. Daniel didn't either. He walked slowly, stopping every few steps to observe the environment. He looked at the ground. He studied the direction of the wind systems. He noticed small details that the advanced sensors had ignored. Kale watched from the control room, confused. What is he doing? One researcher asked. Kale did not answer immediately, because he was beginning to understand. Daniel was not approaching the Vorax. He was communicating with it. Suddenly, the habitat alarms changed. The damaged environmental system released a burst of artificial pressure, causing several large structures inside the area to shift unexpectedly. The Vorax reacted instantly. The creature moved between Daniel and the unstable section of the habitat, placing itself between the human and the danger. The security team prepared to intervene. Get him out now, an official ordered. Daniel raised his hand. No, everyone froze. Daniel, the situation is unstable, Kale said through the communication channel. Daniel looked toward the creature. I know. Then move away. Daniel remained calm. It is not protecting itself. The room went quiet. It is protecting the juvenile. The Vorax watched Daniel for several seconds. The creature was powerful enough to intimidate every species watching from the other side of the glass. Yet Daniel noticed something different. The creature was not searching for a target. It was searching for safety. Daniel slowly lowered himself to one knee, making himself smaller. He did not reach forward. He did not force contact. He simply waited. The seconds felt longer than minutes. Then the juvenile Vorax slowly moved closer to the adult. The tension in the habitat changed. The creature's posture relaxed. Across the galaxy, millions of viewers watched something they never expected to see. A human standing inside the territory of the galaxy's most feared predator, not fighting it, not controlling it, but earning its trust. Kale stared at the screen, unable to look away. How did you know? He whispered. Daniel heard him through the communication device. "Know what?" Kale answered softly. "That it was never the monster." Daniel looked at the Vorax. "I did not know." He paused. "I just gave it a chance to show me." But before anyone could process what had happened, a new alert appeared on every screen in the control room. An unauthorized signal had entered the habitat network. Someone else was watching. Someone who did not come to understand the Vorax. They came to prove that humans were still beneath them. The message appeared on every screen at the same time. Unknown signal detected. Unauthorized access to habitat systems. For a few seconds, nobody in the control room spoke. The summit had already witnessed something impossible. A human had walked into the territory of the galaxy's most feared creature and returned with a level of understanding that no scientist had achieved in decades. But now something else had entered the picture. Something planned. Something deliberate. Dr. Kale Voss stepped toward the main console, his eyes narrowing as streams of information moved across the display. "That is not a system error." The security officer beside him shook his head. "No, doctor. Someone bypassed our external monitoring network." Kale looked through the glass toward Daniel Carter, who was still inside the habitat with the Vorax Titan. Daniel noticed the change immediately. Humans had a habit Kale was beginning to recognize. They paid attention to things that did not make sense. Daniel touched his communication device. "What happened?" Kale answered quickly. "Someone accessed the habitat controls." Daniel looked around the environment. "Can you identify who?" The control room went silent as the technicians worked. Then a name appeared on the screen. Commander Rax Thulin. The reaction was immediate. Several delegates recognized the name. Rax was not a scientist. He was not a diplomat. He was a legendary hunter from the Korean species, a civilization famous for tracking dangerous creatures across the galaxy. His dark violet armor plates and enhanced senses had made him one of the most respected predators among alien worlds. He had spent years studying creatures like the Vorax, and he had never accepted the idea that humans belonged in those conversations. A communication channel opened. Rax's voice filled the room. "This demonstration proves nothing." Kale looked at the screen. "Commander Thulin, you interfered with a diplomatic event." Rax ignored him. His attention was focused on Daniel. The human did not understand the creature. He simply got lucky. Daniel remained quiet. Rax continued. "Humans have always confused survival with superiority. You found one peaceful moment with a dangerous animal and now believe you understand it." Daniel looked at the Vorax beside him. The creature remained calm, watching him carefully. "You think I am trying to prove humans are better?" Daniel asked. Rax laughed softly. "Is that not what your species always does?" Daniel shook his head. "No." That answer surprised everyone. "Then what are you proving?" Rax asked. Daniel looked toward the observation window where hundreds of alien delegates were watching. "That you were wrong about the creature." The room became quiet. Rax's expression hardened. "You still do not understand. The Vorax is dangerous because it cannot be controlled." Daniel looked back at him. "I never said it could be controlled." That sentence changed the mood completely, because it revealed the difference between Daniel's thinking and everyone else's. The galaxy wanted to dominate powerful things. Humans wanted to understand them. Rax, unwilling to accept that answer, activated a secondary command. The habitat systems shifted again. The environment began changing, creating conditions designed to test the Vorax's instincts. Security officers immediately protested. "Commander, stop the simulation." Rax ignored them. "Let us see if the human's confidence survives reality." Daniel looked around as the habitat changed. The Vorax reacted, moving closer to the juvenile and carefully positioning itself between the smaller creature and the changing environment. Daniel understood immediately. This was not a challenge. It was a mistake. Rax thought he was testing a predator, but he was actually testing a protector. Daniel looked directly at the communication device. "Commander." "What?" Rax replied. Daniel's voice remained calm. "You spent years studying monsters." A pause. "Maybe you should have spent more time learning what makes them stop being monsters." For the first time, Commander Rax Thulin had no immediate response. But before the conversation could continue, the habitat sensors detected something unexpected. The Vorax was not reacting to Rax's test. It was reacting to Daniel. The creature slowly moved closer, lowering its head toward the human. Every observer in the room watched in disbelief. The galaxy had spent centuries trying to defeat the strongest creatures it could find. And now everyone was watching a human achieve something far more difficult. Trust. But then the main display changed again. A classified file appeared. A file about Daniel Carter's past that even Kale had never seen before. The classified file appeared on the main display, and for the first time since the summit began, Dr. Kale Voss saw Daniel Carter look genuinely uncomfortable. Not afraid. Not worried. Something different. Like a person who had just discovered that a private memory was about to become public. The file contained years of information. Training records. Exploration reports. Environmental studies. But the part that caught everyone's attention was a single line at the top. Former lead specialist, Earth Adaptive Survival Program. Kale slowly turned toward Daniel. You are not just a food researcher. Daniel looked away from the screen. No, Commander Rax Thulin watched with satisfaction. Now everyone can see the truth. Humans hide behind simple jobs and friendly conversations, but underneath that is something else. The Korean hunter stepped closer to the camera. You wanted to show the galaxy that humans understand predators. I wanted to show the galaxy why humans should never be trusted around them. Daniel remained silent. That silence bothered Kale. He expected anger. He expected an argument. Instead, Daniel looked at the Vorax. The creature was still calm beside him. Rax. Daniel said through the communication channel. You are making the same mistake again. The commander narrowed his eyes. And what mistake is that? You are looking at what I did. You are not asking why I did it. The words created an uncomfortable pause. Kale looked back at the file. He began reading the details more carefully. Daniel had not spent his life hunting dangerous creatures for fame. He had spent years studying how different species survived extreme environments. He worked with rescue teams. He studied animal behavior. He helped design safety protocols for human colonies on unfamiliar worlds. Everything about his career was built around one idea. Understanding came before control. Rax noticed the change in Kale's expression. Do not let him manipulate you, Doctor. Humans are predators. They simply hide it better. Daniel finally looked directly at Rax. You think being a predator means wanting to destroy everything weaker than you. Rax said nothing. That is why you misunderstand humans. Daniel walked slowly through the habitat, keeping a respectful distance from the Vorax. Humans survived because we learned that every creature has a reason for what it does. Rax crossed his arms. Beautiful words. But words do not change biology. No, Daniel replied. They change behavior. Suddenly, the habitat alarms changed again. The control room reported a new problem. Rax's unauthorized system changes had affected the environmental controls, and the artificial terrain was becoming unstable. The security team moved quickly to restore normal conditions, but the control interface was locked. Kale looked at Rax. You need to release access. Rax refused. The test is not finished. The room erupted with disbelief. Even the other alien delegates began questioning his decision. But Rax remained confident. He believed Daniel had simply been fortunate. He believed the Vorax was only calm because circumstances favored the human. Daniel heard the conversation through his communicator. He looked at the creature beside him, then at the changing environment around them. Commander, he said, you are not testing the Vorax. Rax smiled. Then what am I testing? Daniel answered immediately. You are testing whether your own assumptions can survive being wrong. The words landed harder than anyone expected, because everyone watching understood something important. Rax had entered this situation believing he was studying humanity, but every decision he made was revealing more about himself. Then the Vorax suddenly turned toward the far side of the habitat. Daniel noticed the movement first. The creature was not reacting to the environment. It was reacting to a signal. Kale checked the sensors. His expression changed. That is impossible. Daniel looked toward him. What is it? Kale stared at the readings. There is another Vorax signal nearby. The room went silent. Rax stepped closer to the display. Another one? Kale nodded slowly. But that cannot happen. Daniel looked at the creature beside him. The answer was becoming clear. The galaxy had spent centuries studying one legendary predator. But nobody had realized they were only looking at half the story. The entire control room went silent as the second Vorax signal appeared on the display. For decades, the galaxy believed there was only one creature capable of surviving the harsh conditions of the outer moons. One legendary predator. One impossible survivor. But the sensors were showing something nobody expected. There were two. Dr. Kale Voss stared at the readings, checking the information 3 times before speaking. This does not make sense. Commander Rax Thulin stepped closer. Explain. Kale looked uneasy. The Vorax population was believed to be solitary. They do not travel together. They do not form groups. Daniel Carter heard the conversation through his communicator. Maybe that assumption was wrong. Rax looked toward him. You think you understand everything after one encounter? Daniel shook his head. No. I think we understand too little after thousands of years of studying from a distance. That answer irritated Rax more than any insult could have. The Korean hunter had built his entire reputation around understanding dangerous creatures. His career was based on one belief. The strongest beings were defined by dominance. The Vorax was feared because it could survive anything. Rax believed that made it the perfect example of a true predator. But Daniel was seeing something different. The second signal moved closer. The security feed adjusted, revealing another Vorax approaching from the far side of the habitat. The room expected a confrontation. Instead, the two creatures moved with careful coordination. The adult Vorax from earlier remained near the juvenile, while the newcomer observed the surroundings. They were not competing. They were communicating. Kale whispered, almost to himself, "They are cooperating." Daniel nodded. "Yes. That has never been recorded." Daniel looked at him. That does not mean it never happened. Those words struck the scientist harder than he expected. Because science had a dangerous habit. When something was not documented, people often assumed it did not exist. The situation inside the habitat continued changing because of Rax's unauthorized adjustments. The environment controls were still unstable, and the automated systems began trying to correct the problem. The Vorax reacted immediately, moving the juvenile toward the safer section of the habitat. Security officers prepared to enter, but Daniel stopped them. "Wait." Kale turned toward him. "Daniel, the system is failing." "I know." "Then why are you waiting?" Daniel watched the creatures carefully. "Because they know this environment better than we do." Nobody liked that answer. But nobody could deny it. The advanced monitoring equipment had created confusion. The creatures themselves understood the situation. Then something unexpected happened. The smaller Vorax moved away from the adult and approached Daniel. Every person watching froze. The creature stopped several feet away and lowered its head slightly. Daniel did not move closer. He did not try to touch it. He simply stayed still. Rax watched from the control room, unable to hide his disbelief. "That is impossible." Kale looked at him. "Why?" Rax answered immediately. "Because creatures like that do not trust." Daniel heard him. "You are wrong." Rax looked toward the screen. "You think it trusts you?" Daniel shook his head. "No, a pause. I think it knows I am not trying to control it." That sentence changed everything. Because the galaxy had spent centuries approaching powerful creatures with the same question. How do we defeat it? How do we contain it? How do we make it obey? Humans had asked something different. What is it trying to tell us? Then the final piece of the mystery appeared. Kale reviewed the original Vorax records and found a hidden detail buried in old research. The creatures were never classified as solitary because they lacked connection. They were classified that way because nobody had ever earned enough trust to see the connection. Rax stared at the information. His entire understanding of the species began to collapse. Daniel looked toward him through the screen. "Commander, you spent years hunting the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy." Rax remained silent. Daniel continued. "But you never learned the most important thing about them." The Korean finally looked up. "And what is that?" Daniel answered quietly. "The strongest creatures are not always looking for a fight." Before Rax could respond, a new alert appeared. This time, it was not from the habitat. It was from the Summit Security Network. Someone had leaked the entire event to the galaxy. Millions of viewers were watching, and the person responsible was not hiding. Commander Rax Thulin had broadcast everything himself. The moment Commander Rax Thulin's broadcast reached the galaxy, the story changed completely. Millions of viewers had expected to see a human exposed. They expected Daniel Carter to fail. They expected proof that humanity was pretending to understand something far beyond them. Instead, they watched a human stand calmly beside the creature every other species feared. They watched a Vorax Titan choose trust over instinct. And they watched the galaxy question everything it thought it knew. Inside the control room, nobody spoke for several seconds. Dr. Kale Voss stared at the live audience numbers climbing across the display. "Everyone is watching this now." Daniel looked toward the screen. "Good." Kale turned to him. "Good." Daniel nodded. "Maybe now they will stop guessing." That answer surprised Kale. Daniel was not interested in proving humanity was superior. He was not celebrating. He was not trying to embarrass anyone. He simply wanted the truth to be seen. Commander Rax, however, was struggling with something different. His reputation had been built on certainty. He was the expert. He was the hunter. He was the one who understood dangerous creatures. But now the galaxy was watching a human demonstrate something he had never achieved. Connection. Rax finally spoke through the communication channel. You believe this changes everything? Daniel looked at the screen. No, then what does it change? Daniel answered. It changes what people are willing to admit. The words reached every viewer. Because the real problem had never been the Vorax. The real problem had been the assumptions surrounding it. Kale returned to the research files, searching through old studies. He discovered something hidden in the original observations. Early researchers had encountered signs of social behavior among Vorax populations, but those findings were dismissed because they did not match expectations. The galaxy had not misunderstood the creatures because the evidence was missing. It had misunderstood them because nobody wanted to believe the evidence. We were not studying the Vorax, Kale whispered. We were studying our own fear. Daniel looked at him and nodded. That happens more often than people think. Outside the habitat, the situation began to stabilize. The environmental systems returned to normal, and the Vorax family moved calmly through the restored area. The emergency that had caused panic across the summit was no longer an emergency. It was a lesson. But then another message appeared on the main display. A priority transmission from the Galactic Council. The room became quiet again. The council representatives appeared one by one, their expressions serious. The oldest member, Counselor Valen, looked directly at Daniel. Human Carter, your actions today have created significant concern across multiple worlds. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Concern? Valen nodded. Your species has demonstrated an unexpected relationship with a creature classified as one of the galaxy's highest-level predators. Daniel waited. And? The counselor paused. And that relationship suggests humanity's understanding of survival may exceed our own. For the first time, the alien leaders were not speaking down to him. They were asking questions. Kale noticed it immediately. The balance had shifted. But before anyone could continue, Commander Rax stepped forward. You are all missing the point. Everyone turned toward him. His expression was no longer confident. It was determined. The human succeeded here because the conditions were controlled. The creature was calm. The environment was limited. He looked directly at Daniel. You have not proven anything about humanity. Daniel studied him quietly. What do you want to prove? Rax answered without hesitation. That this was an exception. He activated a new file on the display. A location appeared. A remote world on the edge of known space. A place where the galaxy's most dangerous species gathered naturally. Kale looked at the information and immediately understood why Rax had chosen it. No, Rax looked at him. Why? Kale's voice became serious. Because that place does not test creatures. He looked at Daniel. It tests civilizations. Daniel stared at the location coordinates. For the first time since entering the summit, he became completely silent. Because Rax had not challenged him to understand another animal. He had challenged him to walk into the one environment where every species believed humans would finally reveal their limits. The coordinates on the screen remained unchanged for several seconds. A remote world at the edge of known space. A place that most species only studied from a safe distance. A planet filled with environments that challenged even the most advanced explorers. Commander Rax Thulin looked confident again. He believed he had finally found the answer he wanted. A place where humanity could no longer rely on patience, understanding, or careful observation. A place where instinct would decide everything. This is the real test, Rax said. Not a controlled habitat. Not a diplomatic event. Not a creature that has time to adjust to a single human. Daniel Carter stared at the location. He knew the planet. Everyone in his field knew it. The world was called Nerith Prime. It was considered one of the most difficult environments ever discovered. Extreme weather patterns. Unpredictable ecosystems. Life forms that adapted faster than most scientists could study them. Kale looked at Daniel. You do not have to accept this. Daniel remained quiet for a moment. Then he smiled slightly. That is exactly why I should. Kale frowned. Why? Daniel looked back at the council members watching from their screens. Because if I refuse, everyone will believe I was afraid. Rax crossed his arms. And are you not? Daniel looked at him. Of course I am. The answer surprised everyone. Rax expected confidence. He expected a human trying to appear fearless. Instead, Daniel admitted something most species considered a weakness. Fear is not the problem, Daniel continued. The problem is letting fear make your decisions for you. 3 days later, Daniel arrived on Nerith Prime with a small research team. No weapons, no military support, no attempt to dominate the environment. Only equipment for observation and survival. Rax watched from the command vessel above the planet, waiting for the moment humanity's confidence would disappear. But the hours passed. Then a full day, then another. The reports coming from the surface confused him. Daniel was not fighting the environment. He was learning from it. He studied the weather patterns. He adjusted his movement according to the terrain. He observed the local creatures instead of avoiding them. And slowly, the impossible happened. The world that had rejected every other visitor began revealing its patterns. Kale watched the data with disbelief. He is not conquering the planet. A researcher beside him answered. Then what is he doing? Kale looked at the screen. He is listening. On the 3rd day, Rax finally contacted Daniel directly. You are still trying to prove humans are different. Daniel sat beside a small campfire under the alien sky. No, then what are you doing? Rax asked. Daniel looked at the landscape around him. I am trying to understand a place that everyone else decided was impossible. The answer was simple. Almost too simple. But it carried something Rax had never considered. The galaxy had always measured strength by control. Humans measured strength by adaptation. When Daniel finally returned to the summit, something had changed. Not just in the opinions of the alien delegates. In their understanding of humanity itself. Commander Rax stood before the council, silent for a long time. The warrior who had spent years believing he understood every predator in existence finally admitted something difficult. I was wrong. Nobody expected those words from him. Daniel looked at him, but said nothing. Rax continued. I believed humans survived because they were dangerous. He looked around the chamber. But that was not the truth. The room waited. Humans survived because they learned. The Galactic Council later changed its classification of humanity, not as the strongest species, not as the most advanced, something far more meaningful, a species defined by curiosity, patience, and restraint. Years later, when young alien students studied Earth, they no longer learned that humans were the creatures who defeated monsters. They learned something much simpler. Humans were the creatures who looked at monsters and asked why they became monsters in the first place. And on Earth, Daniel Carter returned to the quiet life he always preferred. He never called himself a hero. He never believed he had changed the galaxy. When someone asked him what humanity's greatest advantage was, he always gave the same answer. We are not special because we are fearless. He would smile and add, we are special because we can be afraid and still choose to understand.